Hi guys, and welcome back to another Hearts of Iron 4 short guide. Today I would like to take a look at peace conferences in general, with particular attention to the difference between annexing and puppeting a state. In addition to that, we'll also talk about some of the other things that I usually do during my peace conferences. Now, you may recognize this save. It is the same one from my other short guides. We just finished the war with the United Kingdom. We just finished World War II. We largely dominated. If you want to see how, make sure to check the last short guide I made about World War II. So we got a much higher war score than war participation than Germany, and with that we can do a lot of nice things here in this conference. So let's start with the obvious part. If there are territories that you plan to core later on, in this case we plan to recreate the Roman Empire, so we know that we can core the United Kingdom, we know that we can core France, we know that we can core Belgium and Netherlands. Of course, these territories are territories that you want to take and not to puppet. That's pretty obvious. Another obvious thing is that you want to annex the territories that you need to reform the Roman Empire. For example, to reform the Roman Empire, we need all of the coastal provinces, which means that in this case, we are going to take all of the coastal territories that we can and that we will need for the Roman Empire. Okay, so first priority, the territories you need for whatever you're trying to do, take them. Second thing, you're going to take the territories that you can core later on. We're going to do that as well. Now we're going to prioritize the ones at the border with Germany, because as of the latest patch, they made it less likely for the AI to try to take states which they do not border. So if we stop Germany at the beginning, in the first turn or two of the conference, they are less likely to go and take the rest of France or England. So what do we puppet instead? What I like to puppet are territories that are far from me, but rich in terms of resources. If you look at the East Indies, if you look at Malaysia and Singapore and so on, this region is extremely rich with resources, especially with rubber, which is a very important resource. You need it for your trucks, you need it for your planes, so you want to have an abundance of rubber at all times. So what we're going to do next is we're going to puppet all of the territories here that have rubber. We don't want to leave it to the Germans, and also we want it for ourselves. These ones are very rich too in, I believe that's tungsten. We have plenty of points. We already took everything we wanted, because I don't like to control directly anything else but what I can core and what I need around the Mediterranean. So everything else that is far away from me, I prefer to puppet. So in addition to resources, of course, what I would like to do as well with my puppeting strategy is taking some strategic territories. Now, not the ones in Africa so much, but for example, we got Canada, and these territories can be strategically important if you're going to go for an invasion of the United States. So another thing to do with puppets is you can take all of the territories that you plan to use for future strategic developments. Okay, now basically we puppeted what we wanted, and we are left with a few points, and we want to use these points because one of the great things about puppets is that you can use them for war reparation, which will give you civilian factories. Now, more importantly though, we will get resource rights. The reason we took all of these rich in resources territories and we puppeted them instead of annexing them is that we want to take full advantage of those resources, and we can do that by adding resource rights at the end of the war. So one could say, why don't you just take everything at this point? So why not annexing all of this land instead of puppeting them? What's the real advantage of puppets? Well, puppets have two big advantages. One is that if I annex these territories, I'm not going to get full resources out of them. I'm going to get a much reduced amount of resources. That is because these are not my core territories. I cannot make them my core, and from non-core territories, especially with a high resistance, I will get less resources. Of course, resistance is another issue. if I take these territories, I will need to garrison them, which means I will need to invest resources in reducing the resistance there. So it is an investment, and I don't get anything back right away. While puppeting them, I immediately get the resources with the resource rights, and I don't need to invest any resource myself in protecting those territories. The other thing is, when you start a war, your puppets do not automatically join the war with you. You need to call them. If you do not call them, they will not be at war with your enemy. And unless your enemy fabricates a claim on them and starts a war against them, your puppets will not be part of that war, which means that you do not need to defend them. That's another amazing thing. So, say these territories here, they are pretty far from me. It would be annoying to have to send an army. And if I start a war with, say, Japan, I would need to protect them because Japan would most likely attempt an invasion. By puppeting them, unless Japan fabricates a claim on them, I will not need to worry about them. So I get the resources, I don't need to invest my resources to garrison the territories, and I don't need to send my army to defend those territories. In addition to that, your puppets send you divisions over time. They will offer you divisions that you can use or anything you want. Do consider that if you use them, you increase the freedom points. I don't know what they are called, to be honest, but the points of the puppets. When those points reach a certain limit, the puppet will gain more freedom. So you don't want to use your puppet divisions too much if you want to avoid that. What I personally do with my puppet divisions is I use them to garrison the harbors and the coastlines of my territories where I do not expect a fight, but just in case I want to be covered. So, now, before this war, I had already defeated the Turkish Empire, and I had made a puppet out of, a puppet out of the Turkish Empire, and that is simply because I do not want to border directly the Soviet Union. So if we start a war with the Soviet Union now, I will not have to worry about this front, because the Turkish Empire will not be at war with the Soviet Union. And I did the same exact thing with Romania. So Romania will separate me from the Soviet Union, which means I do not have to worry about this front. Another great advantage of puppets is that you can use them a bit as like a buffer state that you use between you and your enemy to create some distance and territories that cannot be passed or invaded. This mechanic is not entirely accurate historically, because of course I assume that the Soviet Union would not have cared about the Turkish Empire being my puppet and not officially at war. They would have just gone through it. But in the game, the AI will not attack your puppets unless they justify a war goal on them, which is fairly rare. Let me just go for one last brief recap to explain what we said. So, annexing is better when you need those territories to recreate whatever empire you want to recreate, and it is better when you can core those territories. Puppets are better when the land is very far from you and very rich in terms of resources, so you will get all of the resources for free. And puppets are also better when you want to create some distance, to put some distance between you and your enemies, make sure they will not be able to attack you, and so reduce the fronts that you have to protect. I think that would be it for what concerns annexing versus puppets. I also showed you what I do during the peace conference in addition to puppeting, which is adding war reparations for more civilian factories and resource rights to get all of the resources for free. Yes, one more thing. If you do not do resource rights, you can still trade with your puppets at here you can see the effects of puppeting those regions. Look at the abundance of rubber we have now. That being said, where is my puppet? Yeah, say Italy and Belgium. But you know, usually you would only get 8 resources for each civilian factory. But in this case, as you can see with Belgium, with 0 civilian factories, we can already get all of their rubber. So it's not always for free, but overall you get very, very convenient trades with your puppets. So that's another advantage of puppeting territories. Okay, that's all for today's guide about annexing versus puppeting. Hopefully this guide was useful for you. If there is anything I did not mention and you think it is important, please make sure to let me know in the comments. Also, of course, if you agree or disagree with me. If you enjoyed the guide, please leave a like to the video and subscribe to the channel. That would be very important for its growth. That being said, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.